Hello and welcome to News Centre. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The price war in the SUV market has escalated. Two of India's biggest competitors, Tata Motors and Mahindra Group, have slashed prices of their leading SUVs within hours of each other. This price reduction comes a few days after Maruti Suzuki cut prices on its only lifestyle off-roader, the Jimny. The SUV's Zeta variant is now available at a discount of up to 1.75 lakh rupees, while its Alpha variant is available at a discount of up to 1.8 lakhs. Moreover, customers who opt for Maruti Suzuki's finance service can receive additional benefits of up to 1.5 lakhs. We spoke to R.C. Bhargava, chairman of Maruti Suzuki, and started by asking him about the waiver of road tax on hybrid cars in Uttar Pradesh. Now, this policy was launched way back in 2022 and ends in the year October 2025. It has created quite a flutter in the market. Companies like Maruti, Toyota and Honda see this as a big encouragement for hybrid vehicles and also feel other states should follow suit. So what did R.C. Bhargava say when we asked him about this policy coming to an end next year?
Well, I'm sure the UP government will take into account that although the policy was originally framed and I think intended to be implemented from 22, it's actually come into effect 2 years late. And that could be a consideration which they might take into account next year when they're nearing the end of the period of 25.
But would that be your ask to the UP government, maybe a recommendation?
See, we keep working with state governments on these matters. It's not as if it's a one-time activity. And there are many areas which state governments can work on with us, which would help to promote the total industry and create more economic activity everywhere as a result.
Right. The UP government has also called a stakeholder consultation meeting tomorrow. The Mahindra Group, Toyota, Maruti Suzuki, Honda, Hyundai, they're all a part of this meeting. What do you think this is being called for? Are you going to be giving any sort of suggestion to the UP government? Because one point that is being discussed and is there in the circular is that the UP government would like to see if the current policy can be aligned to the FAME 2 policy and kept for hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles costing up to 15 lakh rupees.
There are no hybrid vehicles up to 15 lakh at all.
Right.
Because all hybrids are of a higher cost. In future, maybe vehicles will be developed if conditions are such that the total cost of the vehicle is not raised to levels which make them unaffordable. But at this stage, 15 lakhs means that this concession given gets withdrawn.
Right. So you would actually push for making sure that the policy continues in the present.
You know, Parikshit, we have been looking at the taxation, overall taxation for electric vehicles, hybrids, and of course petrol and diesel vehicles in the EU, in Japan, in America to find out what is the global practice. You find everywhere the basic taxation, whether it's the VAT or the sales tax, is the same for all vehicles. In Europe, they have this carbon-related tax. And if you look at the total impact of the carbon-related tax, the hybrids pay 1% higher than what the electric vehicles pay. The petrol-diesel vehicles pay roughly 6% higher than what they pay. In Japan, the difference is even less than that. But this is the UP, which is the maximum, EU, which is the maximum. What I'm trying to say is that taxation globally is only marginally different between different categories of vehicles. It's left to the customer to decide what he wants to do. Here, if you look at the basic taxation, is 5% for electric vehicles and from 28 to 43% for cars. Hybrids are 43%. So the difference is 38%. So that also is a factor which I think people need to keep into account, that we are that far different from global practice.
But you feel that other states should follow Uttar Pradesh? Are you in conversation with some
I think
states?
a number of states have been working on various kinds of changes in their policies to support different technologies. I believe that in most cases, what decisions they took were held up for the same kind of reasons that the UP government decision was held up. But hopefully now that the UP has managed to solve this issue, which has been kind of roadblock, other states will manage to do that, and whatever they have been working at for years now will come out in the future.
Right. So as we move towards electric vehicles and other alternate fuels, what role can hybrid cars actually play according to you?
My view is that if we want, and that's a basic objective of all policy, is two. One is to reduce the imported oil consumption. And number two is to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. And all these policies are ultimately directed to achieve that end. Now, we have to take into account the fact that if you just promote electric vehicles, 80, 90, maybe 70% of cars will be non-electric vehicles 10 years from today. During this period, these vehicles, if they remain only petrol or diesel vehicles, they will have the highest consumption of both oil and emit greenhouse gases. So while electric vehicles have their own place in the system, one has to be realistic and realize that the penetration of electric vehicles is going to be a gradual process and not going to happen that, okay, today we see electric vehicles, 2 years later everything is electric. It's not going to happen. It can't happen. And therefore it makes obvious sense to me that during this period, while we are moving from the start of the electric vehicle, which was a few years ago, and moving forward and trying to find cleaner solutions, we should look at how the petrol and diesel vehicles also are converted into other technologies which is not electric, which the customer is willing to accept, and which will result in achieving both the objectives which we mentioned.
Right. Are you also seeking from the central government, because at the end of the day there is a GST, there is a cess on hybrid cars. Is there a demand that you've made with the central government, either Maruti in person or the industry body together, on rationalizing the tax structure on hybrid cars?
We have been saying for a long time that hybrid cars need a tax reduction. I just mentioned to you the global situation. The difference between electric cars and hybrids is 1% in Europe. In many matters, we follow Europe. Then why should it be 38% in India? So certainly we have been saying, and this is not anything secret, we've been saying for a long time that we need to rationalize the tax structure. We've also said CNG should have a lower tax structure than petrol cars, because CNG is a much cleaner vehicle. It reduces oil consumption, reduces greenhouse gases compared to petrol. And why is CNG and petrol taxed at the same rate?
Mr. Bhargava, I'd also like to ask you about the current price wars that we're seeing in the automobile market since the beginning of July. Two leading automakers, Mahindra Group and Tatas, have reduced prices of their SUVs. I believe Maruti Suzuki is also giving discounts. Do you feel that the current price corrections that we're seeing in the market, this is because of low demand? As an industry veteran, do you feel that...
In the month of June, retail sales were lower than what I think most companies expected. Some say it was because of the heat wave and the resulting absence of as many footfalls in the dealerships as there should have been. And therefore, these stocks with dealers have piled up. And, it's always a question of supply and demand. So if there is too much supply and people are holding cars and they're incurring holding costs, inventory costs, then it makes sense to give a discount and sell them. I think that's what's happening in the industry.
Right. But Are we going to see heavy discounting by Maruti Suzuki as well? Because we were hearing that this is just the start of the discount period and discounts across the car companies could go up higher.
So we have to see how sales go now in July. If sales pick up and stocks come to more reasonable levels, the discounts will come down.
Are you also making an inventory correction at the company?
To some extent, all companies should, we are doing it, other companies should also be doing it, I expect, to correct the sale of vehicles to dealers who have large stocks. It doesn't make sense to push vehicles to dealers if they already have large stocks.
Right.
And therefore, it doesn't make sense to produce those vehicles.
Right. My final two questions, Mr. Bhargava. One, going ahead, how do you expect different segments of your portfolio to contribute to Maruti's growth story, be it hybrid, be it CNG, be it electric and internal combustion?
I think India is a very large and diversified market, starting from small cars, which as I've been saying that I expect in the next, let's say, couple of years, the small car market to revive. I think all these cars will find a place in the customer's portfolio of different areas and different segments. I think the rural segment will keep growing, and the cars which are preferred in the rural areas. And some of the rural areas today are buying the top level cars also. So I don't think one can just quantify which segment will do what. I think we have to keep watching how the customers move up, because with changing economic strength of each customer and customer segment, the preferences of vehicles will also change.
Right.
So in our growing market in India, and not only growing market in India, in a country where the economy is growing and people are moving up from low income to at least middle or upper middle level incomes, there will be continuous change in demand. I think a car company has to keep track of that.
According to you, what will be the ideal tax rate on hybrid and CNG vehicles?
They can't be the same, but I mean, there has to be. I like the European model, EU model of a flat tax rate on all vehicles, whether the GST, whether that GST is 12% or 18% or whatever the wise people decide, and then a tax based on the carbon tax type, depending on what each fuel does. But you have to take into account what the fuel is contributing to overall pollution and greenhouse gases, not just from the tank to the wheel.
Okay, my final question, any immediate asks from the union budget to spur demand and increase manufacturing in the country?
I don't think there would be any specific thing which the union budget can do. If the union budget, which I think it will, steps up infrastructure expenditures, steps up some other targeted expenditures which will create greater demand in the rural areas, that itself will have effect on the demand for cars. And the car demands, as you know, is much related to how the economy is moving.
Right.
The more the purchasing power with people, the more they see optimism in what's going to happen in the future, the greater is the willingness of people to invest in expensive consumer durables.
Right.
So it's all partly a question of how people perceive the future, partly a question of how actually money is coming into their pockets.
All right. Mr. Bhargava, wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for speaking to CNBC-TV18. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Time for a short break, but coming up, the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum says the business community expects the government to bring in measures to trigger growth across sectors, specifically around tax policy in the union budget. A special discussion when we are back.